Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that's pretty heavy but absolutely fascinating. What the biblical texts actually say about adultery. You know, when most of us hear that word, we immediately picture a broken rule, right? A physical line crossed in a sudden moment of weakness. But as we unpack the source material today, we're going to see that the biblical view of infidelity is a whole lot deeper than just the physical act itself. It's really this profound look into human trust, emotional safety, and the very foundation of our closest relationships. So most people assume adultery is strictly a physical action. But what if it actually begins in the heart? What if the truth goes way deeper than what happens behind closed doors and actually starts long before any physical boundary is ever breached? That is the exact paradigm shift these texts present to us. They're basically challenging readers to take a hard look at their inner worlds rather than just checking a box on outward behavior.
Part 1. Beyond the physical act, the original command. Okay, let's dive into this. To truly grasp the depth of this issue, we've got to look beyond the physical act and go right back to the original command found in the text. Do not commit adultery. It's short and it's incredibly direct. But here's the thing. The context around this rule is literally everything. In the biblical framework, from the very beginning, marriage was designed to be built on this unshakable foundation of trust, loyalty, and deep commitment. This command, it wasn't just handed down as some arbitrary rule. It was specifically put there to preserve that precious foundation, because breaking it means fracturing the very trust that holds the entire relationship together. It's really all about protecting that bond.
Part 2. A matter of the heart. Jesus' shocking teaching. Now, what's really interesting here is that the biblical narrative doesn't just stop with those ancient historical commands. We hit a moment in the texts that completely redefines how this whole concept was understood. Jesus takes this established external rule and radically expands it. He shifts the focus entirely to internal motivation. So instead of just measuring physical action, which, by the way, was the standard legal metric back then, the paradigm shifts to inner desire, to lust. The texts record Jesus teaching that even looking at someone with lust is the equivalent of committing adultery in the heart. Think about that for a second. This means the betrayal actually begins inside. It takes root right there in the mind, long before it ever manifests as a tangible physical action.
Part 3. The hidden damage. The real cost of betrayal.
And that internal shift, that is exactly why the source texts highlight the hidden damage. Because let's be real, when an internal failure goes unchecked, it doesn't just quietly stay contained in your mind. It's like a pressure cooker. It eventually bursts outward, causing massive, real-world destruction. The fallout detailed in the text is just immense. First, it completely destroys trust between partners. And we all know trust takes years to build and literally seconds to lose. It is the absolute bedrock of a partnership. Second, it ruins emotional safety. That secure harbor you're supposed to have with a partner, completely compromised the moment betrayal enters the picture. And finally, it shatters families and futures. What might have seemed like just a hidden desire ultimately rips through homes, causing deep, lasting pain to everyone involved.
Part 4. A story of grace. The woman caught in adultery.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Because how does the text actually handle this kind of devastation? Well, we find a fascinating real-world case study in the story of the woman caught in adultery. It shows us exactly what happens when this incredibly heavy law meets human failure face to face. First off, we have a woman caught right in the act. The evidence is completely undeniable. Second, a crowd surrounds her, and they are violently demanding punishment according to the strict law of the time. The tension here is incredibly high. But then, Jesus does something entirely unexpected. He diffuses the angry crowd, and he offers her absolutely no condemnation. He just extends pure grace. And finally, he tells her, "Go and sin no more."
Part 5. The path forward. Grace and change. And this brilliantly illustrates a massive theological pivot in the text. It moves the entire conversation away from strict condemnation and punishment and shifts it toward a profound path of restoration. It sets up this totally new framework where we see two powerful truths operating right side by side. On one hand, we see absolute forgiveness, grace freely given without having to be earned, but it's perfectly balanced with the expectation of real change moving forward. God doesn't just point out the wrong. The text suggests there is the offer of a completely new beginning alongside the expectation of changed behavior. So what does that change actually look like in practice?
Well, the biblical texts basically call readers to actively cultivate some very specific positive virtues. It highlights faithfulness, actually remaining true to your promises and commitments. It emphasizes self-control, managing those inner desires and matters of the heart before they turn into destructive actions. And it underscores a deep respect in relationships, treating a partner's heart, their emotional safety, and their trust as something incredibly valuable, something sacred.
Very often, people look at biblical laws surrounding relationships and marriage and just see arbitrary restrictions. We tend to think of them as these rigid rules designed to limit human freedom. But the true intent presented in the text? It's loving protection. These guidelines aren't there to restrict human flourishing. They are specifically positioned to protect us and the people we love the most from profound, devastating hurt.
Because, as the text illustrates, truth shows the problem, but grace shows the path forward. Based on everything we've explored today, adultery isn't just framed as breaking some technical rule. It's categorized as breaking trust and losing something deeply valuable. But the overarching message here is that no matter what has been lost or what mistakes have been made, there is a path toward healing and restoration. Truth shines a light on where things went wrong, while grace provides the actual mechanism to move forward.
The ultimate takeaway from these ancient texts really boils down to this: guard your heart, protect what matters. Everything we've seen today points to the reality that before a relationship ever falls apart physically, the heart drifts internally. It leaves us with a pretty challenging reflection. In a world that is so hyper-focused on outward actions and visible boundaries, are we paying enough attention to the hidden desires shaping our deepest relationships?
Thanks for watching.
Stay blessed and don't forget to share this video with everyone.